Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new Pokemon TCG video. Today's video is going to be another one featuring me and a blue golf ball. Today's deck challenge is going to be to build a deck only consisting of Pokemon that have 100 HP or below. We did put some restrictions, the main ones of course being that we were not allowed to make use of any Night March Pokemon or Flareons at all. So with those restrictions in place, I felt like to a certain extent it does limit the number of Pokemon that we can decide to play with, but I felt like I came up with a pretty good deck for the most part. Now you guys are probably quite familiar with the strategy. The main attacker of our deck is going to be the Executor with the Blockade attack. Essentially the entire purpose of our deck is to try and support or lock the opponent, so we're not ever really going to be making use of the Stomp attack. We're actually not running any grass energy cards in our deck at all, and I'll get to that in a minute as to reason why we're running only the fairy energies. But again, we are going to be using the Blockade attack, not an attack that should ever be underestimated. I mean, that supporter lock is absolutely deadly once it does get going. Now, we've seen a dramatic decline in the use of Executor decks, mainly because Lysander's trump card is no longer a part of the game. So what that means is that we're just going to have to be a lot more careful when executing this type of deck. So again, Executor is going to be the main attacker of our deck. We are running a total of 4 copies of the Execute. It has the propagation ability. This will allow us to repeatedly fetch them out from the discard pile, and then we can use cards such as the Ultra Ball, send them back into the discard pile. So just a very flexible Pokemon, and of course the fact that these Executes will ultimately evolve into the Executor, so we are running 4 copies of them. Some other Pokemon that we are running as well, guys, we are running a total of 4 copies of the Swirlix. Not a very important Pokemon, so I'm not really going to be discussing it. Its entire purpose is to evolve into 2 varying types of Slurpuffs. So one of those Slurpuffs is the Slurpuff with the Sweet Veil ability. This will allow each of our Pokemon that have any fairy energies attached to them to not be affected by any special conditions. So now it starts to make a bit of sense as to why we are running those fairy energies. So that is pretty much the entire function of this Slurpuff in our deck, and then we're also running the other Slurpuff with the tasting ability. This will allow us to draw onto an additional card during our turn if it happens to be one of our bench Pokemon, and if this Slurpuff happens to be our active Pokemon, we're able to draw onto 2 cards, so that is kind of cool. Slurpuff is going to be a huge draw supporter type Pokemon in our deck. Just really helps our Executor deck perform much better, so we are running 2 copies of him. And the very last Pokemon the last 2 Pokemon in our deck, one of them is going to be the Munna with the long distance hypnosis. So the idea behind this Pokemon is that we can repeatedly make use of its ability, and whenever we flip the heads, we put our opponent's active Pokemon to sleep. And of course, if they are supporter locked, then they pretty much can't do anything. Of course, if we happen to flip the tails, there are some consequences in that we could put our own active Pokemon to sleep. Now, of course, to negate that, that's where the Slurpuff with the Sweet Veil ability comes in. So essentially, there's no risks at all for us running the Munna, except the fact that in case it does get Lysandered out, again, the opponent will be supporter locked. But in case it does get Lysandered out, it does have a pretty bulky retreat cost. But nonetheless, Munna is much more so of a helpful Pokemon as opposed to a detriment in our deck. The very last Pokemon in our deck is going to be the Jirachi X with the Stellar Guidance ability. This will allow us to look for any supporter card whenever we do lay this Pokemon down into our bench. So Jirachi X is an exceptionally useful Pokemon, especially in this deck since we're not running a whole lot of supporter cards. As you guys can see, we're actually only running a total of 5 draw supporter cards, 6 supporter cards in total, but of course only 5 of them are the draw supporters. So that Jirachi X is a very important Pokemon. We are running a single copy of him. Some other cards that we are running, guys, we are running a total of 3 copies of the Battle Compressor. This will allow us to search our deck for up to 3 cards to discard. Ideally, we'd like to use them to get the Executes with the propagation ability into our discard pile, possibly a Juniper or something like that as well, because we are running a total of 4 copies of the VS Seeker, so we can definitely make use of those cards all over again. So that Battle Compressor goes a long way in our deck. We will be running 3 copies of it. Our ace-spec card is absolutely and without a doubt going to be the Computer Search. Just in these sorts of very disruptive decks, I feel like Computer Search is always the card that you guys would love to be able to use in this type of deck. Computer Search is just such a helpful and powerful card, so that's why we are running it as our ace-spec. Technically, you guys could run the Dowsing Machine, but I really would not recommend it. Of course, since we are running a highly disruptive strategy, we are running a total of 4 copies of the Hypnotoxic Laser. Ideally, we can put the opponent's Pokemon to sleep, and of course, that poison damage is really where the bulk of the Executor's strength comes from. Unfortunately, without Lysander's trump card, we are capped at a total of 4 lasers, so we do have to be pretty smart when using the Hypnotoxic Lasers. So we are running 4 copies of that. Of course, 3 copies of the Verbank City Gem to increase the total damage output of those lasers, and then just allow us to stack up those damage counters in between turns. So we are running 3 copies of the Verbank City Gem. We're also running a total of 4 copies of the Crushing Hammer, just an energy disruption card. Ideally, we can get the heads and get rid of some energy cards. A single copy of the Enhanced Hammer. Again, same sort of function as the Crushing Hammer, except it is restricted to special energies only, but there is no flip coin requirement. So it's a pretty cool card. We are running a single copy of that, and I think most of the other cards in our deck are pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to be going through them relatively quickly. We are running a single Sacred Ash to allow us to recycle some of our Pokemon from the discard pile and then shuffle them back into our deck. That Sterling Megaphone will ideally allow us to deal with Garbodor, which again we don't see a whole lot of, so it's just another nice card to include. A single switch card to allow us to switch in between our Pokemon. 4 Ultra Balls will allow us to grab the Pokemon that we need. 4 VS Seekers to reuse any of our supporter cards. 3 Muscle Bands to increase the total damage output of the Executor, and a total of 6 Fairy Energies. Now again, since this is a battle, sort of a deck that I've conjured to face a Blue Golf Ball with, what is going to be happening is that the deck list video and the battle video are going to be separate. So I've included a ton of links in the description section down below. So links to a Blue Golf Ball's channel, to my channel, to a Blue Golf Ball's deck list for his own under 100 HP deck that he came up with. There's going to be some links to our battles as well. So definitely be sure to check those out, guys. And if you guys did enjoy this video, well, at least this deck list, and of course the video that will soon follow, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, guys, and I will see you guys shortly.